Mark Twain said, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes." The Roman Republic was one of the most powerful democracies of its time, but it collapsed due to growing inequality, corruption, and the rise of authoritarian rule. The US was explicitly modeled after Rome, so we must ask, are we on the same trajectory? Let's explore the historical patterns and what they could mean for our future. Rome started as a balanced government with monarchy, democracy, and aristocracy. Over time, wealth and power concentrated in the hands of the elites, and the lower classes, the plebeians, lost faith in the system. Corruption spread, elections became rigged, and violence became a political tool. In the end, democracy collapsed, paving the way for dictatorship. Rome's government was designed to balance power, but rising inequality led to turmoil. The wealthy elite dominated decision making while the lower classes suffered. This resulted in class conflicts, economic struggles, and an unstable government, conditions that sound strikingly familiar in modern America. The founders of America admired Rome's system of checks and balances and built the US with similar structures. But Rome's downfall wasn't caused by foreign invasion, it was internal instability. Today, America faces comparable economic disparities and political polarization, raising concerns about whether history is repeating itself. Philosopher Giovanni Vico believes societies follow a cycle. Democracy gives way to oligarchy, which eventually leads to dictatorship. As inequality rises, populist leaders gain influence by exploiting public resentment. Rome followed this pattern. And are we? Populism divides society into two groups, the pure people and the corrupt elite. In Rome, populists promised to fight for the common people, but ultimately led to dictatorship. In America, distrust in institution fuels political rhetoric, making the system vulnerable to the same fate. Julius Caesar rose to power by claiming to fight for the people. Economic instability and political corruption created a desperate public willing to support a strong leader. After years of political chaos, Caesar took control, ending the republic and setting the stage for empire. Like Caesar, Trump positioned himself as an outsider fighting for the people. He tapped into economic and social frustrations, gaining a loyal following. His legal battles, much like Caesar's, only strengthened his image as a fighter against the establishment. Some political thinkers argue that a strong leader, like a modern Caesar, is necessary to restore order. This belief stems from dissatisfaction with democratic institutions and frustration with economic stagnation. Rome's reliance on a strong man ended democracy there. History suggests that when economic and political crises grow severe, people look for decisive leaders. The fall of Rome shows us that unchecked inequality and political discontent can create conditions where democracy collapses under the weight of its own instability. Rome granted more people citizenship to maintain stability, but it failed to address deeper inequalities. The US had expanded legal rights over time, but economic and racial disparities persist. Without real reform, political instability remains a threat. Some argue that legal equality is enough, while others push for economic reforms to ensure fair opportunities. In Rome, economic inequality remains unresolved, fueling unrest. If the US fails to address these divisions, democracy may weaken, just as it did in Rome. Rome's failure to adapt led to dictatorship. The US faces deep political and economic divisions, especially in the wake of recent elections. So, will America take action to stabilize its democracy, or are we on the same path toward decline? History often offers warnings. Rome's leaders ignored growing inequality and political corruption until it was too late. Democracies require trust, balance, and reform. If the US follows Rome's trajectory, the erosion of democracy norms could be irreversible. So, will America learn from Rome's mistakes, or are we doomed to repeat them? The choices made today will determine whether democracy survives or collapses under the weight of inequality and political dysfunction. History doesn't repeat, but its patterns are clear. What happens next is up to us.